We're moving along. We're on Tez Zion. We're on 16a. Okay. We're on Tez Zion Amar Aleph. A. A few lines from the top. And the art scroll is 16A1. The Gemara just quoted, the Gemara is going back and analyzing something that we just said. Said if you have a garment that made from materials that grew from the ground, if they grew from linen or grew from cotton, so technically it met one of the requirements of Succah. One of the requirements of Succah is that it has to originate from the ground. So it came from the ground, but there's another requirement that it can't be susceptible to contamination. It has to be something that cannot receive contamination. This garment once was able to receive contamination because there was a certain size. There's a certain size of a garment. If a garment is made a certain size, it has the ability, good morning, Mr. Haber, to receive contamination because of its size. If it's too small and it has no use, that is not able to receive contamination. But something that reaches a certain size, so a size of, let's say, when it comes to a garment, welcome. If you have a garment that's the size of, say, 3 fingers by 3 fingers, that size already could be used as a patch. A poor person has a hole in their pants, a hole in their shirt. If you have a little piece of garment that's at least three fingers breadths long, 3 fingers breadths wide, that size garment has the ability to serve a purpose. But if the size of the garment, of the piece of material is so small, in some places you just throw it out. It has no use. Can't sell it. It has no purpose. And therefore it's not going to be able to receive contamination. Receive contamination means that now, if it comes in contact with something that's contaminated, certain laws that certain things have the ability to contaminate other things, but not everything has the ability to become contaminated. So this is something that this item, once it's the size of material that's usable, and different types of materials have different sizes. A mat, to be a mat, you have to have a certain size to be a mat. A much larger area to be considered a mat. So you have different sizes will be required for different things to be considered usable. And once it's usable as a utensil, then it should be subject to contamination. So now we have the story the following. You had a garment that already had the size, originally was the size that would meet the requirements to be able to be susceptible, to be able to become contaminated, to receive contamination from something that has the ability to contaminate. But now that garment that has a history that once was able to receive contamination no longer is capable of receiving contamination because that garment has become lessened in size. It was worn out, pieces came out from the garment, and no longer is it at the same size that it was before. So now the question is, at one time, this garment cannot be used as Succah, as a cover for your Sukkah, because it was susceptible to contamination, right? Bamboo sticks that you place on top of your Sukkah, they cannot become tameh. They could be in a room with a dead body. If you have bamboo sticks, those bamboo sticks do not receive contamination. Even though they're in the same room with the dead body, they touch if the dead body touches the bamboo sticks, it will not become contaminated. But in contrast to a bamboo stick, the bamboo stick never had a history that it was able to become contaminated. But this garment that we're talking about had a time period in its history that was able to receive contamination. Now, in its present day, today, it's not able to receive contamination. So now the question is, how do we treat that garment? Is that garment, do we look at today? Good morning, Mr. Silverman. And since today it's not able to receive contamination, so then, good morning, Dr. Navid. Because today it's not able to receive contamination, so then technically maybe I could use it for my Succah because it meets the requirements. Or do we say that since it once had a history of contamination, the rabbis will make a gzeira, the rabbis will say you can't use this garment today, even though today it's not the size to have the ability to receive contamination, less if you use it today, maybe you would use such a garment even before it gets worn out. And you come to make mistakes, and you won't know that a garment that's able to receive contamination is not allowed to be used, because you look at this garment, you know it had a history, it had the ability to receive contamination. Today it doesn't, so people might not make that distinction. So that's the question. So we had a rabbi who went on record and he said he's concerned, or he says that even if today, Mr. Silverman, you have a garment that does not have the size to receive contamination, but if it once had the ability, it's no good today. Once this item was considered invalid for schach because it had the size, even if today it doesn't have the size, if this same item is around, you can't use this item for schach. That was the chidush, that was the contribution of that rabbi. So now the Gemara is going to focus in and zero in on that. Now on 16a1, we are on the first one, Gufa. Amar Rav Ami, Rav Ami says in the name, Rav Ami, the son of Tivyomi, says the following. If you went ahead and you covered the sukkah with pieces with linen crew from the ground, and it was worn out of the sukkah, we say the sukkah is invalid. It's not a kosher sukkah. What is this bloi kelim that you're talking about? Kelim, worn out garments. What's the size? Matloniot she'ein behem shalosh al shalosh. Pieces of a garment, a patch of a garment, a piece of a garment, it's less than 3 finger breadths by 3 finger breadths. It's such a small amount. This is a finger breadth. If it's 3 long and 3 wide, that's not an item that's able to. The low patch, which is less than 3 finger breadths, it's not fit below lashirim. Nobody has use for this person, and certainly not a wealthy person has no use for this patch. And therefore, since it does, therefore it's not able to mikabel tuma. Now, rich people, even if it would be a larger size, larger than 3 fingers by 3 fingers, they would discard of. But the question is, what about poor people? If it's a large, if it's 3 fingers by 3 fingers, they would keep it. But if it's less than 3 fingers by 3 fingers, they don't keep it, and therefore it has no use. It's discarded. It's scraps. It goes into the garbage, and that's not able to receive contamination. Now the Gemara says we have a Braita, early teaching that supports this ruling. Hanya Kavatei Rav Ami bar Tivyomi. We have a Braita that supports this law. What's the Braita? It says if you have a machselet shel shifa v'shel gemi, if you have a mat, and the mat is made from different types of materials that were kosher materials, let's say from reeds, kosher or other materials that came from the ground, that means there's no issue with about the material. The material is kosher material for Succah, but the issue here is regarding tumah. So if it's a mat, so the size for something to a mat to be able to receive contamination, it has to have a certain size. A size of a mat is considered 6 tefachim by 6 tefachim, which could be anywhere from 18 to 24 inches, by 18 to 24 inches. If you have some 18 to 24 inches, that's already something you could sit down and lie down on, maybe use a 1.5 by 1.5. It has some nice area. So that if it's that size, that's the size that people will use as a mat. But if it's less than that size, then it's not used as a mat, and therefore it's not considered a keli. It's not considered a utensil. So now shiureha. Let's say this mat became lessened. The mat, you had it originally, it was a full-size mat. It met the requirements that it was able to susceptible to receive contamination, but then it became shortened, the mat. It's no longer the size that's generally used for a mat. So now at today's state, it's not able to receive contamination. But at one time, this mat, but what's left today is from a larger mat that was able to receive contamination. So what does it say in the Braita? Even though it got less than the minimal size for a mat to be able to receive contamination, the rabbis say that you still can't use this for Succah. So we see from here, good morning, Eli. We see from here, because that even something that was once had the ability to receive contamination, if this item no longer has the ability, but once had the history, still is forbidden to use for Succah. So that's what the Gemara says. The Gemara continues. Machselet hakanim. If it's made from different types of material, the kanim, it's made from, let's say, from reeds. The machselet is made from reeds. So now gedola misachim ba. So now the Gemara says, if you have a mat of reeds, if it was very large, a very large mat, we say you could use. We are on 16A1 on the right side. Machselet hakanim, if it was made from reeds. Gedolah, if it was a very large mat, misachim bo. You could use for Succah. Ketana, a misachim bo. Ketana, you can't use. Now, what is this all about? So,
what about adding to it, Rabbi?
Okay, but the question here, so let's explain what's going on. The question is, when you make such a large mat, there's the standard mat, right? The standard mat, let's say 6 tefachim by 6 tefachim. 6 tefachim, we said, is anywhere between 18 and 24 inches. That mat is generally used for sitting down or lying down. That is the general size of a mat. That when you have the general 18 to 24 inch mat, you go into a store, you go, what's the size? Mat, Miss Dave, 1.5 to 2 feet, whatever, that area, that's the size of a mat that we use. You want to go for your lying down, you want to sit down, that's the size mat. But what about if you have a very large mat, much larger than that? So that type of mat, the first opinion of the Gemara says, that's not made for sitting and lying down. that's more made for covering a hut. That's a sukkah mat. People use that size is generally used to cover a sukkah in the morning. So since it's made to cover a sukkah, so therefore it's not mekabel tumah. It's not made for a purpose of a person going ahead and sitting on and lying down on, because that would have made it fit for receiving contamination. But since this is made from wood, right? This is reeds. Reeds come from the ground. It's like wood. We consider, and so that would not, if something is made for the purpose of schach, not for the purpose of use for sitting and lying down, would not be susceptible to receive contamination. So here the question is, how do you look at this mat that's made very large? Do you say that since it's made so large, it's clearly not made for sitting on and sleeping on, and therefore it will not be susceptible to contamination? So that's the opinion of the Tanna Kama. Gedola misachim bo. If the fact that a person, if it's made for sleeping, made for sitting, that will give it the ability to receive contamination. But here, when the mat, morning Adam, when the mat was made for the purpose of schach, that's not able to receive.
What if accidentally somebody sits on it?
But it's a good question. But the Gemara's question is: I have a mat. I went ahead and I went to the store and I bought a mat. Right? The mat was already made. And now I want to go ahead, and what's my purpose I want to use this mat for? I want to use the mat for schach. That's what I want to use the mat for. But the question is the fact that I now want to use the mat for schach, but what is this mat? What is its general use? So the Gemara says it depends what is the norm. The norm is if the mat is a size of 6 tefachim, 18 to 24 inches, that mat is used for, you go into Home Depot, they'll tell you that mat is used just as a sitting and lying down mat on. If it's a larger mat, very large mat, they'll tell you that's used generally for covering a hut, for schach, and therefore, and then it wouldn't be susceptible to receiving contamination. So it's not used for a person so therefore, the Tanna Kama holds, if it's a gedola misachim bo. If it's a very large mat, it's interesting, the Gemara did not identify exactly what that size is. But if it's very large mat, that the commentators would have to go more into. Then misachim bo. Ketana, if it's a smaller mat, the normal average mat, ein misachim bo. That mat, you can't use that schach because that mat would be made for sitting and lying down.
Rabbi, isn't the mat a keli now? That it's being used?
That's what the Gemara said. If it's a keli, would depend. Here, it would depend what its use, what the way people use this mat.
If it's a rug, it's a keli. If it's a sleeping mat, it's a keli.
Correct. If this mat would be used for sitting and lying down on, then you're correct. That would make it be able to receive contamination. However, but because of the size of the mat, and this also, by the way, when people make schach today, people have these mats, right? You see these roll-up mats for schach, right? So it would seem to be, based on our Gemara also, those mats are manufactured specifically for schach. It's not made for sitting on, lying down on. Even if you're going to tell me there are people that might go ahead and, they want to go ahead and put on their floor and they want to put these mats on their floor, that's not how these are made. And therefore, they're made specifically for Sukkah, right? A lot of these mats that have hashgacha, right? Whatever they have supervision, they give a hashgacha on the mat that it's made, that it's done right, that this mat that you could use this mat for Sukkah. So here, the Gemara says, our Gemara has a machloket. can you use a large mat for schach? But our Gemara, you could say, is talking about a case when it wasn't wasn't specifically manufactured for a sukkah. It was manufactured in a certain size. And now you have to know, could you use it for schach or not? It's whether it's the Gemara did not discuss whether the mat is new or not new. I mean, the Gemara is talking about you have a mat, you went to the store and you have a mat.
It's like a rock. It's like a rock.
Right.
You know, what are you using it for?
Right. So the Gemara also didn't discuss how you're putting on this mat on top of the sukkah. So the Gemara says, so
Rabbi.
Yes.
Quick question.
Yes,
What's considered? What makes something contaminated? Like, what are we talking about here? I mean, tuma is so general.
Right.
What are we talking about? If it's tuma, it's tuma.
Right. In general, you see, there are certain items that receive contamination, right? A flat piece of metal receives contamination. But here we're talking about things that grew from the ground. We're talking about things like wood. So wood, a flat piece of wood is not susceptible to contamination. But even though a flat piece of wood is not able to accept contamination, but if it's a wooden object that's made for sitting and sleeping on, that type of item would be susceptible to contamination.
Or a vessel.
Let's say you have a wooden container. To make a wooden container, a wooden cup. So
a box with a cover.
Yes.
So once it becomes a utensil, or once it becomes an object that can contract tuma, it shouldn't matter what the size is. If it can contract it.
As long as it's not 3 etzbaot.
But a mat has a larger size. But you're right, Dr. Navid. The question is it susceptible to contamination? This mat, we said a standard mat, the average mat is used for sitting down. The average mat, 6 tefach by 6 tefach, 18 to 24-inch mats are used for sitting, for lying down on. Those mats, you go to the store, you buy that mat is susceptible to contamination because it's made for sitting and lying down on, and therefore you can't use that mat. Well, we're talking about a mat that's larger, much larger than the standard mat. So now and therefore it's not made for sitting and lying down, according to the first opinion. And it's not made for that, therefore you could use that mat for schach, because it's not going to be susceptible to contamination. It's not a utensil, it's not a container, it's more of a flat type of material, and therefore you should be able to use it for sukkah. That is the first opinion. The second opinion in the Gemara is that even if it's a large mat, some people still use a large mat for sitting and lying down, and therefore he holds that you can't even use a large mat for schach. That's the two opinions in the Gemara. Look what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, "Machaselet kanim gedola misachin ba." If it's a large mat, you could use it for schach. Ketana ein misachin ba. If it's a small mat, you cannot use it for sukkah because a small mat is used for sleeping and lying down on. Comes Rabbi Eliezer Omer. Rabbi Eliezer says, "Af hi mekabel tuma." Even the large mat. People use large mats for lying down, and therefore, like most probably a large mat for lying down most probably would be the size. I would say the size of a body of a person, right? Which is much. If you take it's much more than 18 by 24 inches. A person is at least the length of a person. Average person is around close to 6 feet. Which is
what about a doormat?
2 inches.
What about a doormat?
Okay, so it might not, if it's not made for sleeping or sitting down, it might not be acceptable to contamination. It seems that it might need to be made. A doormat is just made to put your your shoes on, not for sleeping and lying down on. So I'm not sure that I don't think that I don't know that would be considered sufficient to Mekabel Tumah. So that's what the Gemara says. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Afi Mekabel Tumah and a Mesach Gabot. You can't use a large mat for schach. So we have two opinions in the Gemara what the status of a large mat. So it would seem right. I'm saying if it was made from Rashi, it would appear. From Rashi, it would appear that what is the way? How is it made? Is it made for lying down, or is it made for schach? And the argument is it enough? Do the manufacturers enough make it for the purpose of a mat to lie down, or not? A large mat, is it also made for lying down purposes? But if you go ahead or it's not, or it's only made pretty much for schach. But if you make it specifically for schach, it would seem there's room to say that everybody would agree. It never was able to receive contamination. Remember, we had a Gemara before that says if you're in the manufacturing process, remember we spoke about, let's say, something that's used for a tabletop or something that, let's say, at a certain point in the processing, it could be used for it could be used for something, but you don't want to use it for that. You want to go further in the manufacturing. You want to do so it's not considered that the item is complete if you're still a part of the manufacturing process, even though at a certain stage in the process it already has use for, let's say, to put as a cover of a table. But if you don't plan on stopping at that point, it's not considered at that point a utensil. So it would seem, based on that, if your intention is you don't plan on using this for a mat, so it never got the status of a mat. If your intention was that I'm processing, I'm making it for something else, it would seem the logic should say that it's not considered it's not. We don't look at it like it's a mat. We look at it like it's not made for that purpose. It's made for some other purpose. It's made for schach, and therefore it should not be able to receive contamination. We do see that we have a lot of people using mats, right? Mats on their sukkah mats. And then again, they're specific. It's not like they go to Home Depot and buy sukkah mats. They don't have hashgacha. It's because those mats, we'll get into this question over here. We're talking about they're going to buy mats that were made specifically with the intention to be schach. If you were a manufacturer and you would make the mat specifically for schach, for sitting on, you want to change your mind. That would be right. That would be a big problem, right? Because we said that the intention of the person is key in whether something receives contamination or not. If you intended that it should be a mat, a normal size mat, and now you change your mind later on, we said that changing your mind doesn't change this. It's not enough to change the status. You might have to do an action in the item to show that you changed it to it. You want to make it a different thing. Maybe you have to start cutting the item in a way to show that it's made for no longer using it for, that it's no longer using for a mat, but you cut it in a way that's used for sukkah schach. Exactly. It's interesting that the power, something becomes contaminated through thought. And it just shows you the power of thought. The fact that you wanted it to be a certain item, that gives it the level of susceptibility to contamination. Dr. Navid, yesterday you mentioned about a wooden utensil, correct?
Yes.
Now, so I just wanted to get back to you. I said that I was going to look up a little bit about the wooden utensil. We said yesterday that if you have a wooden utensil, right, like as Mr. Silverman mentioned, a container, a cup, a wooden cup has the ability to receive contamination, right? We spoke about that. That's why even the mat, a standard mat, has the ability to receive contamination. The wood has the ability, if it's a utensil or if it's a mat made for lying down, sleeping, to receive contamination. The question is, and by the way, in this week's parasha, we have the story.
Can we take it to mikveh?
Do you have to take to a mikveh? That was the question. So I looked, so it says wooden utensils, if you buy a wooden utensil from a non-Jew, you do not need to take it to a mikveh. Okay, let's explain. If you buy metal from a non-Jew, you buy silverware, you buy a pot, stainless steel pot, you buy glass from a non-Jew. Good morning, Max. Max, yesterday you were here, right? So we're addressing the wooden question of Dr. Navid. If you buy metal, you buy silverware, you have to go bring it to the mikveh. But if metals and glass have to go to the mikveh. Wooden utensils, china, if it's not morning, earthenware utensils do not require mikveh. The question is, but if something is glazed with glass, then usually we'll send it to the mikveh. Maybe we won't say a brach on it. But
like colored glass, you're saying, right?
What'd you say?
Colored glass?
And a glass utensil requires mikveh. But wooden utensils, if you buy, I don't know, anybody buys any wooden cups or wooden types of silverware? Maybe wooden spoons. Wooden spoons do not require mikveh. Metal requires mikveh.
What about colored glass?
I don't know why colored glass should be any different than regular glass. It says it's made from glass material. What's the difference between colored glass and regular glass?
It has a film on it.
A film. Okay, I'm gonna have to look it up. We have to look it up. But general glass requires mikveh. It's a rabbinic obligation for glass. And regarding metal,
with that bracha.
What'd you say?
With the bracha?
Glass with a bracha. You make a bracha. If you go ahead and you go to the store and you buy 6 glasses for your house, wine glasses, you got to go ahead and bring it to the mikveh. And to take off the labels, and before you dip it into the mikveh, you say the bracha, and then I'll tefillas keli. If it's multiple kelim, you say bracha Hashem, I'll tefillas kelim, and then you dip it and make sure it's totally immersed in the mikveh.
Metal needs a beracha?
Metal needs a bracha and glass needs a bracha. Metal is based on this week's parasha. The metal, by the way, also when you place it in the mikveh, make sure the whole thing gets covered with the water. This week's parasha, they went to war against Midian, and the laws of purifying those utensils that they got from Midian. So there's the idea they have to get it. The utensils absorbed. They were used utensils. So you got to do hagalah. You got to purge. You got to get rid of whatever was absorbed in the utensil. So whatever absorbed through fire, you got to get rid of through fire. And whatever absorbed, if it was, depending on how the item absorbed the not kosher food, that's how you got to get rid of it. That's getting rid of the not kosher food that's within the utensil. But the pasuk mentions it says yischata. It has to be in the waters of a nidah. So there's a question what those words mean. So one explanation means a mikveh. That would indicate that putting your utensils in a mikveh, if you buy a metal utensil, the Torah's obligation, according to that understanding, would be metal utensils is the Torah is obligating for mikveh. And it all depends how you understand the pasuk. And in the Yalkut Yosef says there's a machloket in the poskim, where the dipping metal is biblical or rabbinic. And from the Shulchan Aruch, from Moran, it appears that he holds his min Torah. When you buy a metal utensil, you have a biblical obligation, but glass is rabbinic. The fact that it's rabbinic doesn't, Hanukkah is also rabbinic. Purim is also rabbinic. We follow rabbinic, right, Mr. Ava? We follow rabbinic law. So people have to be careful to take the metal, the glass, say the bracha before you dip it in.
Just a side note, what do you do with a kitchen sink that is stainless steel?
See, what you would do with a stainless steel kitchen sink, you would go ahead and you would boil, if you moved into an apartment and then it was a not kosher sink, you would go ahead, clean the sink, wait 24
Brand new
hours.
construction.
And what did you say?
Brand new construction. Do you have to dip it into
Brand new,
mikveh?
that's not, you will not have, there's nothing, you don't have to do anything with a sink.
Why? It's a utensil. It's an
But you're not,
object. Doesn't have to
again,
go to
you're
mikveh?
not eating with the sink. You're not eating with the sink. You're not eating.
Right.
You see, therefore, you don't, no need to, but any utensil that you buy, that you're eating with that utensil, you're eating, you're
Got it.
drinking, those are the utensils you have to go ahead and put to the mikveh.
Most houses have meat and milk sinks now. They do.
What'd you say, Ms. Silverman?
Most homes do meat and milk sinks now. They do
Yeah,
two
very
different-
good. Yes. What'd you say? Well, the wooden spoons do not need, you don't have to bring it to the mikveh at all. Wooden spoons do not require a mikveh if you buy a wooden spoon. There's no need to go to the rabbi, because only metal, glass has certain similarities to metal. The rabbis made a decree on glass, said you have to bring glass, but wood is so totally not similar to metal anyway. Therefore, you do not have to go ahead and bring wooden utensils to the mikveh when you buy it.
So what do we do with the bed? What do we do with the bedpost that you're supposed to? It says you have to take it to the mikveh.
Right.
In the Gemara, that was the whole idea.
That bedpost, that's talking when there are certain things that receive contamination. Let's say you could have a concept that an item could become contaminated. A wooden container, as Mr. Silverman said before, could receive contamination from something that's tameh, from a dead body, but it doesn't mean that when you buy it from a guy that you have to bring it to the mikveh. The question of mikveh, the item was never contaminated. You bought a new item from the guy, it was not contaminated. It's not like it wasn't that needs to go and remove a contamination. It's just that it was owned by a non-Jew. So that's the question. Something was owned by a non-Jew, wasn't contaminated. It's not that it was contaminated. It was owned by a non-Jew. It's not that it fell into the rules of contamination. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow, everybody. It's time for minyan.
Thank you.
Running late. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi. Bye-bye.
You too.
Great day.
Great day, you too. Behave and be careful with the running.
Yeah.